Good morning, everyone. This is Denise Broom in the Engineering CAD Systems office, and I want to welcome you to this week's weekly Wednesday webinar. Our topic this week is the Advanced D&C Manager setup, and basically what I would like to show you this morning is something we haven't taught in quite some time, but it's really getting behind how the D&C Manager items work and how can you go in and set up items to work for you. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and jump straight into MicroStation, and today I'm working in Select Series 3, and I have the D&C Manager open already, and I've got the SS3 DDB open. One of the first things, if you are looking at making modifications to the D&C Manager, the first thing you need to do is save this file. I'm going to do a save as a new file. I'm going to save this to my working directory. Okay, we recommend that you put it in the SYMB directory, or you can give it the project number. If you give it the project number, we have configurations set up so that doing two things at one time. We have it set up so that if it finds this DDB in your working directory or your SYMB directory, then it will open this DDB up instead of the FDOT DDB. And the reason that we recommend that you save this to your local directory for your project, there's several reasons for that. One is a lot of times you're on the server and this file is read-only on the server. Another reason is that you want to keep the original DDB file that we create out there. That way, if you make any changes, you do anything to it, you can always go back and get what we've provided. Go navigate and open that new one up, and go to my project directory, SYMB, and let me open this DDB file up. Okay, and basically what we're trying to show here is I've had a lot of questions that have come in over the past several months, where there are certain things like perhaps I don't have a pay item in here, or there may be times when I've had some of the guys from like Signal that are working on signalization plans that want to come in, and perhaps they want to put in more than one pay item associated with, say, a cabinet, and how can they do that? Another thing that I've had just basic questions on, how have I got the D&C Manager set up? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up a few items here just so that you can see what we have. We basically have three different types that we use with DOT. We have drafting items, and these drafting items are set up. Let me go ahead and I'm going to open one up. Drafting items are set up to simply draw in your file, and it sets the symbology. And it has drafting preferences set up with it so that I can set what my lines, my curves, stationing, anything like that. I can set this information up in the D&C Manager, and then it uses it. For example, if I have for curves, I can set the symbology, which some of these aren't all set up, but I can set the symbology for it. Let's see, let me get to the center line of construction. I know this one's got everything in it. So if I went to review this, I can see it's set on the center line of construction. If I have lines, I have different, if I wanted to label my lines, the length of a line, using the D&C, I can set these defaults. Set a different symbology for the text than I do for my line work. It allows me to set all of these things up in advance, and then all I have to do is use that item and start drawing with it, and then it sets all my symbology the way that I need to. Okay, so that's one type of item. Another type of item is simply default. And if I go and I look at one of these default items, it has the information on basically placing an element in the file so that it recognizes it. It has some keying commands, and I can add some ad hoc attributes. Okay, so this is the most basic type of item that we have. And the third type of item are the compute items, and I need to scroll way down here. And let's just look at some curb and gutter. And if I go into, let's say, type F curb and gutter, and all I'm doing is right-clicking to get to these options, and then I'm going to modify item. You can also go to review item if you just want to see what it is, a little bit safer. If you don't worried about changing something, you just want to look at it. By habit, I use modify. And the difference, this last one is the compute parameters. And that allows me to place an element in my file and then come back and calculate a quantity for it. Okay. Under these compute parameters is where I can set this up. So those are my basics. Now let me start getting into this item modified dialog box. The item modified dialog box is basically set up. You have the very, very top of the box, and it sets the different type. And so this one is compute parameters. Okay, I need to give it an ID. For the FDOT database, we use the pay item, and it is in transport format. So it has the 4 first initial digits, and then it has spaces and numbers to represent the next 3 digits, and then the last 3 digits. Okay, so in an instance like this, if you have 520, there are 2 spaces, so space, space, then the number, and then 10, it's 1 space, and then the digits. So it's 4, 3, and 3. Okay, and we do that because it uses the item ID when we calculate, and it takes that and so it takes and associates my pay item number that I need for transport and quantity manager so that we can run the reports to take it straight to transport. That's why this is in pay item format. All right. Most of our, and I will say most, not all, but most of our attributes for each of these items, the easiest thing has been to simply take it in the old format of putting in pay items with the dashes. Okay, and that's what you'll find is the attribute tags. There is an option in here to set the placement, which is the level symbology. So this one's set for the curb face, and everything else is set to the by level settings. I have an option to set this as basically as primary or as construction. Okay. Most of what we have, there's very, very few items that are set to anything other than primary. If there is a cell associated with this pay item that it needs to calculate or identify, the cell name would be placed here. And then we use the set scale for the most part. You can set the scale using active scale or the creation scale. Okay. We create our cells for the most part. There's always exceptions to every rule, I think, but for the most part, we set our cells at a scale of 1, and so this most often you'll find is set scale, and it's set to 1. This information here for the placement, the attribute tag, the primary or whatever the class is, and the cell name. Okay. These 4 are very important because that is what the D&C Manager uses in order to identify that particular element in your design file. So if I have, for instance, if I use MicroStation tools in order to draw the element, then those MicroStation tools don't place this attribute tag. So it's not going to recognize it. okay? If I go in and I can, because I can set this so that it's, you know, all the bi-level settings are the same and the level is the same, and for all intents and purposes it is the same. But for the D&C Manager, if I have an attribute tag associated, or if it's on a construction class, anything is different about these settings and not match, and it doesn't match, then the D&C does not find it and it won't calculate your items for you. With Select Series 3, depending on how you use your civil tools, if you use if I go in and I'm using any of the GeoPack civil tools, okay, most of these items, when I place the item, if I turn on the civil, but like if I come in here and I place a line and I go ahead and set the feature at this point, you're good, okay? And I can go in and, like, say if I put in the curved face and then I draw a civil line, and it's, of course, why did it not hold that feature definition? Well, you know, there it goes. I did something in my clicks a little wrong. Let me delete this other one. Okay, so if there were any ad hoc attributes on it, it would place it at this point. And you see it has the feature of curb face. If I go in, let me see if it's going to make a liar out of me today. And then so I set it to curb face, not the type F curb. So if I ID this, it should find it. And it does. So that's the face of curb. Now what can happen is that you go to draw, and I've found myself doing this lots of times, and I forget to set this feature definition, and I go to draw it. All right, sometimes you're going to run into, it's best to either make sure you have your feature, and even if I at this point set my feature, I'm gonna bring up the toggle bar. Where'd it go? Okay, it's not going to show it for me. So I'm just going to use the set feature definition. So if I go in here and I tell it that I want to set it to, instead of curb face, I want to use the type F curb and then set it, sometimes it does not add the ad hoc information that I need to go with it. Okay, so it does set my feature, but if I ad hoc, sometimes it doesn't add it. So if that is the case, you'll need to make sure that you go back to the D&C Manager and you go to the correct one, use the set option, and set your ad hocs onto your elements if they are not getting placed. That's something that we discovered not too long ago. So that's just something to be careful of when you're using your civil tools for anything like curb and gutter, paved shoulder, anything that you draw, traffic separators, anything that you're going to draw within your plan view. All right, so the next thing that I just wanted to make sure that was all hopefully clear. The next thing that I want to go into and show you is the supplemental. Okay, so I have, how do I define my item? I have a supplemental search criteria set in here so that if I want to calculate, a good example is guardrail. If I want to calculate all of my guardrail with one item, but yet I place it with two items, okay, then I would set the supplemental search, because we have two levels for guardrail. I have one for the left and one for the right. In order for it to calculate all of it, what's on the left and the right, because it does use the level name as one of its identifiers, then I have to make sure that I turn on that level in the supplemental search so that it finds all of the items that I have drawn both on the left and on the right, okay? And they will both have to have this attribute of 520-1-10. Okay, that's the supplemental search. And basically it just helps me add things to my definition of what I'm finding for it to use. Okay, the third section in here is for my key-in commands. The key-in commands, you can do, I would definitely go in and make sure that the place influence, most of them have them turned on. This works with the curb and gutter maker, and I think that's why it's turned off. So we turn place influence off and then use the curb and gutter maker, which then comes back and opens up the D&C and uses these items in order to place our curb and gutter. Most items that would be turned on, and it's just AC book influence. And then I can give it any command for any microstation tool that I want to use. In this case, it's loading an MDL. It can also, I can have it go in and place cells, give the place cell command. There's a lot of different things. As long as you know what the microstation key-in is, you can type it into here and it will do that. The set, okay, the design key-in command happens whenever I have, it's in the design mode and I double click on an item, okay. My set command works with the set mode of the D&C Manager, and basically what this one we have it do is, so if I double click on an item, it sets that level that it's on. So this is on curb face. It sets that level active and then it loads the select by attributes tool. Okay. Then you can use that in order to set and create a selection set of a lot of elements at one time using that tool. All right. And then the display mode is this display mode, and it uses the display key-in. And again, all this one does is we just have it turn on and make the active level this curb face. Okay, and make sure it's turned on in your design file. Then at the very bottom, I have two options for either ad hoc attributes or compute parameters. Ad hoc attributes we don't necessarily have everywhere. But they can be very powerful. If it's something that we use and we're calculating quantities for, whether it's automated or not, I have design notes that I have set in here with a default value is nothing. And basically it's in there so that during the automation, if you want to add a design note, it is linked to that element, so that when the quantity is picked up through quantity is picked up with D&C, it picks up this ad hoc as well, which goes over to Quantity Manager, which then can be picked up by LDM to get into your summary boxes. Okay, that's one thing that I can do with my ad hocs. Another thing that I can do with my ad hocs is use that in conjunction with an equation. I'm going to go into the quantity features now, and let me open up, I know I've got them out here on our SuperPave. So if I open up the asphalt item, and I go to modify that item, and I look at the ad hocs, I have a lot more in here, okay? I can set the lift, and the lift is an ad hoc that it's a numeric ad hoc that I am using in order to set a value that I need in the equation, okay, in order to calculate this particular quantity, okay. If I open up compute parameters, you'll see that this one is set to an equation, and I'm using the unit of tonnage, and I'm setting that equal to my element, and then I'm dividing it by 9, multiplying it times 110, dividing that by 2000, and then multiplying it times that lift value. Okay, so as long as my ad hoc name, and it can be anything, as long as my ad hoc name equals, you've got it exactly the same in your equation, then D&C knows I need to go look for that ad hoc, and it will use that value. Okay, so that opens up a realm for you as a designer to really, if you can think of an equation, any equation that you need to calculate for anything that you've got, you can put that equation in here and then have D&C Manager calculate that quantity for you based on, you can have the element areas, you can have an element length. There's several intrinsics that it gathers, and I'll take a look at that in just a minute. But I just wanted you to be aware of what these ad hocs can do for me as far as creating items in here to calculate my quantities. All right, I have different options in here. I have a standard unit, and the standard unit uses, if you click on this browse units little icon here, in here I have, this is the unit that I would type in. Okay, some of them are just 2 letters like LF for linear foot. Okay, AC for acres, SF for square feet, SY for square yards, and that's all I would need to type into this section of the dialog box. So if I wanted this just to be square feet, I would type in SF. It would find that area and then just give me the square footage of that area. Okay. I also have some in here where you will see, let me open this all the way up. All right, I still don't have it. A good example of that is like the tonnage. Okay, I can use the square footage, or I can use the area of my element, and I can tell it that, and basically what this turns into is I have the unit, and then there's it needs to follow exactly what's in here, and it's kind of hard to see, I know, but that's a colon, and then the T, which is, and it tells you in here what this equals. The T is the thickness in inches, so maybe I've got 2 inches of something, and then the W is the weight in pounds per square yards. So maybe it's, 60 pounds per square yard. I can then go in and have it calculate that for me. Okay. We've got ours set up with a lift ad hoc instead of using the standard unit. That way it's easier for you as a designer to go in and set that value, because it's going to change. You may have, 2 inches on your main line, an inch or a half inch sitting out there on your shoulders, and maybe you've got a different pavement design sit on your side roads that are using 1.5 inches. So you've got all of these different thicknesses that you can set as you go along, because the ad hoc attributes dialog is up. So I change that value, create my shape, and move on. Okay. So that's another option, is using my standard units. Let me get out of there. Let me bring that other box back up. Okay, so I have a standard unit criteria file. This one I don't imagine you guys are going to use. We do have a few out there. I know some of our end walls, things that are defined in the index, we have a criteria file that we have used that basically it says, okay, what do I have? It goes and it looks for that pay item number, and then it assigns that value of whatever it was in the index back out as the quantity. That's not one that I'd recommend for anyone to, if you're new to this, to start using. One, it's a little complicated writing the code. Number 2 is the code is going away. So I wouldn't worry about the criteria file. We've talked about the equation. It is important that for any equation that I use the unit that I want it to have, tonnage, square yard, square feet, whatever it is, equals, and then whatever my equation is. Okay. My last one down here is ad hoc attributes. And basically when I set it to ad hoc attributes, it is going out and it's looking for special ad hocs that are placed on my element in order that defines what that unit is and how do I need to calculate it. Okay, so I'm going to hit cancel here. I'm going to show you a different one that I've used some of that. I know I have used it with Guardrail, which is up here. So if I'm pretty sure I used it here. Yes. Okay. So with Guardrail, and I started to explain this a little bit ago, what you have in the D&C Manager, I have one item that calculates all of my Guardrail. Okay. Then I have two items, one for the left and one for the right. So if I look at the one for the left, and I'll show you a trick here, I have all the different modes within the D&C. If you set it to this preferences one, then all I have to do is just double click on the item and it opens up the item modify. Okay, so this has been set to Guardrail left and it has an attribute tag of 536-1-1. If I open up the right, okay, it's set to Guardrail right, but it has the same attribute of 536-1-1. Okay, so whenever I come up here to those are both set as default. When I come up here to the one that wants to calculate my compute parameter item, you can see it's set to left, but I've added in a lot of levels in here. And that is because when it computes the Guardrail, it's not only computing the Guardrail for the left and the right. Let me open this up. It's also grabbing these default items for my pipe rail and rub rail. Okay, I've tried to the best of my ability go in and however you need to do your work. If you're going to draw a Guardrail, you should only have to draw it once. You shouldn't have to draw another line for rub rail, another line for pipe rail, etc. So if you know you're using rub rail or pipe rail, use these default items. They all get calculated using the associated Guardrail item up here. And I do that through the option of ad hoc attributes. Okay, so this just gets to set the ad hoc attributes. And then if I go down into any of these, let's just grab the rub rail for the left. If I open this up, you notice that I have ad hoc attributes set up. It is grabbing the 536-1-1 for my regular Guardrail pay item. It has a unit of linear feet. And it's important that, again, like it was with the item name, that this gets set to the pay item in transport format, because this is what it's going to gather whenever I calculate it. So, and they need to match. So I'm using this unit, and it's using the string is set for the description. So I have the pay item, the unit, and the description. There is a third one that I can use, and that's quantity. Quantity, and that one is a good one, is down here on my end anchorage assemblies. Okay, let me open that up, and if I can set my Guardrail, it has a string, it's Guardrail, it has a unit for linear feet, and then I have a quantity set, because these are end anchorages. End anchorages are per assembly. Okay, so when it finds that assembly, it's going to calculate my pay item number each for that end anchorage, but then it's also going to gather the Guardrail quantity that I need at the same time. I have put in a definition using, by default, just the 536-1-1 pay item, okay? And this is using the value or quantity of Guardrail per the standard index. All right, if you're not using say you've got thriving Guardrail or the modified thriving, okay, I don't know what you're using. If you're using a different type of Guardrail, you need to set this to 0. I'm going to hit Control-C to copy that. And I'm going to set that to 0. And then say it's this one. I would set this to, and I can use the Control-C, Control-V for copy and paste. And I can set that up in here, and then when it calculates, it's going to give me the Thrive beam and not the regular guardrail. Okay. This is a obviously more involved scenario, but these are things that you can do with your database. You may have a project where you've got pay items that you need to include, and you want to include them without having to draw something else in there. You know you're going to, but I would make sure that it's related to whatever that item happens to be, so that downstream anyone else can use your modified DDB file in order to calculate and get those same values from the elements in your files. Okay, so I have this set up. Let's look at a few more things in my compute parameters. So we've talked about the computation method and all the different options that are available. It also has some options down here to what am I going to do with that calculation, that number that I get. I can round it, and by default in the D&C Manager, any items that are set up in here are set up to use the rules as they are in the basis of estimates. And the basis of estimates tells me that whenever I calculate a linear foot item, it needs to be to a whole number. But it tells me that each individual quantity needs to be rounded to 1 decimal place out further. So the total value is going to be up to the whole number, but I need to calculate this to the 10th. So my rounding is set up to 0.1. Okay, the 1 represents to which decimal place am I rounding it to. Okay, so in this case it'd be out to the 10,000ths. I could set it out to the 100th. Okay, so this sets my rounding that I need. I can click on round up, and round up, I don't recommend anyone use this, but you could. Round up, basically it says it doesn't matter what that quantity comes out to be. Say I've got 12.001. Well, if it's over anything over 12.00, it's going to round me up to 13 automatically, or up to the next. If it was to a whole number, if it was to the 10th, then it'd be 12.1 instead of 12.0. String processing, continuous, we want it to calculate everything that we have. Quantity factors, I've used this in the past with some of our arrows. You can calculate an item. I don't use it in SS3 because SS3 works a little bit differently with the way I had to set the D&C Manager up, but say every time I find a particular cell in the file, instead of counting it as 1, I can make it count as 2. Okay, that's what the quantity factor does. It multiplies the multiplication factor for the quantity that's out there. If I wanted to divide, I could say 0.5, and it would be half of whatever that value is. All right, quantity deductions, the only thing that we have that uses quantity deductions is your curb and gutter. And basically you go in here, you tell it which item within the D&C that it needs to find, and if it finds it within a tolerance, a deduction tolerance, then it will deduct the value that you have set up from your total quantity. Like I said, curb and gutter is the only one that I have. I don't mess with this one down here too much, but you could have it. This just tells it when to make breaks around semicircles. with, you know, the sweep angle being greater than a given value. I don't typically use that one a whole lot. All right, so let me cancel out of these. I wanted to show you. All right, I wanted to show, I have in here just as these are all examples of what I have out here. I think I was saying earlier that I've tried to, knowing what you're drawing in your plans, I've tried to make this work with keeping in mind your design flow so that you're not having to do anything extra to get your quantity. If you use the D&C Manager to draw it. We had some confusion some time back, and I got comments about it, the traffic separators. Okay, traffic separators, if I go in and I look at these, you'll notice that under compute parameters, I'm using an equation. It's a linear foot item, but when you draw traffic separators, you're drawing both edges into your file. You don't draw one line that represents the traffic separator. You actually draw it at the correct width. So knowing that you've got that in there in duplicate, I'm taking the linear foot of your elements and I'm dividing them by 2. Okay, so that's just one of those things to kind of keep in mind. If you're not sure what is it doing, you can always go in and review and look at how is it being calculated to give you an idea of what's going on. If it's not doing what you need it to do, okay, you can come in here and modify these values. Let me give you another example. Drainage. All of our drainage is set up to work with geopack drainage, okay? And I've had in the past, and I've done this in the past, where I'm working on a project. I'm not going to use geopack drainage if all I have is maybe half a dozen mitered in sections and pipe that I need to put in, or you know, I've got a right turn lane that I'm installing in a curb and gutter section, and I need to move an inlet, okay, or I need to place just one inlet. I'm not going to use geopack drainage for that. I'm just going to place the cell in there. I'm going to tell it what type of box that I need and be done with it. Well, if I want to do that and I want to have geopack and the D&C Manager calculate the number of inlets for me, I can come in here to inlets. You'll notice that, yes, the pay item's here, but it's incomplete. I have B's in here, which represent how big is the box underneath it, okay? So I have B's in here that I need to have a value to. So to do this, basically what I could do, let me take all of these because there's the different diameter bottoms. I'm just going to grab a P6 down here. Okay, what I would do is I would right click and tell it to copy. And again, it's important that we're in our project directory DDB. I'm going to copy and then I'm going to select the item where I want to place this item. So basically if whatever I select is going to put it below it. Okay, so if I'm just going to put it at the top for this P6 and I'm going to tell it okay, just to make it easy. All right, double click on this and it brings up the item modify. Okay, if I'm in the preferences mode, and it'll automatically put this 1 behind it if it's in the same directory. So I'm going to go in here and say, okay, I can't remember, so y'all will just bear with me. I'm just going to throw a number in here, but let's say it's 5. I know that's wrong. I can put in here, you know, the greater than, you know, 10 feet, less than 10 feet, those values in here. And then I can say if that was a 5, I can then come in here and place this as a 5 so that it matches. All right. That way, if I have some that are greater than 10, some that are less than 10, I can still come in here and it'll give me the correct pay items and not calculate everything all at one time. All right, so modify the item number or the item ID as well as the attribute tag so these two match. And then whenever I calculate, that's going to be the only one that it'll do. So then at this point, I'm good to go. Okay, my compute parameters are actually going out to a drainage comp3pc file. Okay. Ad hoc attributes, it just has the design notes, and I could place the design notes in at the time of placement. And then I just tell this that tell it okay. It changes this, and then I can use this item in the design mode, tell it to place influence. There we go. So that I have the place influence that I have, number one, with ad hoc attributes turned on, I can place this. Okay. I can also, it places that attribute tag when place influence is on to make it unique. All right. Then double click on it, and it's going to bring up, and you'll notice down here, active angle by 2 points. So I'm going to give it an active angle to place that inlet, and say I just wanted to place it right here. Okay, then I can come back in and compute that. Wrong chain. I'm on baseline 98 and tell it to compute that. Of course it's going to tell me it's not there. There's nothing in my box. Oh. There we go. All right. So now, and it got that description from the 3PC file. Okay. And it got the pay item number from the 3PC file. So in this case, knowing that's what it does, you'd want to cancel out of this, go back into, you want to go back into this particular one item. And so you see, okay, this doesn't work for me. Modify the item, go back to compute parameters. And since I have it as a cell, I don't need this right here. I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to change it to a standard unit of each. Tell it okay. I'll tell this okay. And then go back, compute my quantity. And I get the pay item that I've assigned it, okay, with one, and it's each. Okay. Another thing that I wanted to just to throw out here, I have had someone come to me before and they said, you know, I've got this particular cell, and maybe it's a tree cell, okay, that they have sitting out here. And we do have, just really fast, let me go back to the design mode. And I'm going to throw in, let's see, some trees. And just grab a symbol here. All right, so maybe I've got some trees that were sitting out here, too close to the road, obviously. And I need a tree count, okay, for whatever I'm doing. All right. I can, for a project, I can take this, let me just make a copy, and I'm going to go ahead and just put this under, I can put this wherever I want to. I'm going to put it just directly under quantity features for now. All right, and go up here. And then I'm going to go in and modify this particular item. I copied the item that I used to place it because it has my cell name in it, because that is important. I need that cell name. All right. So then I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say, okay, let's call this one tree count. Oops, I've got numbers. All right, so that's a tree count. All right. And that's, you can give it any description that you want. And it already has, it's set to tree, it has the cell name in here. I can add an attribute to this if I want, but I don't have to. Not everything that we have has attributes associated. And then I want to come up here and I want to change this to a compute parameters item. I go in here, turn on compute parameters, set my standard unit to each. All right. Obviously each, you can't get a tenth. And then I'm going to tell it okay. And tell this okay. Then I can come in and go back to compute parameters. I'll make sure this is out there far enough. 250 feet inside my design file, compute the parameter. What? What did I get wrong? I know it's something simple. It usually is simple, and I understand completely when you guys call me and it's just frustrating because something doesn't compute right. Standard unit each. Basically all each does is I just want it to count the number of cells that it finds. It's compute parameters. It's looking for a tree. Deciduous. 1 tree. Okay. There's nothing in my collection. Design file inside baseline. Okay. It's always a good idea, and I don't know why it's not. Let me just do this real quick. It may be because I placed it with a different item. So if I go in here to this one, no. Let me clear it, go back to design, place influence. Let me just throw these in here. And then compute quantities. Still not, okay. I'll have to go back and look at this one and why I'm not getting it right. But basically, you can set this up. It's just acting really strange. That should have worked. But basically, you go in and you would set up your own item, and you can have it do things like count trees, or maybe it's some valve boxes in your road, and you can have it do those counts for you instead of having to go plan sheet by plan sheet and count each individual one as you go. And there's a lot of things like that the capability is here in order to make that happen. It's just a matter of setting that up in your own database to make it happen. Like I said, I'm not sure what in the world I have done with this one. That should have worked. So that's it in a nutshell. And this is, I mean, I know I said this was advanced, but these are advanced type topics. And I've given you enough to get you started, probably in the hour that I've been given. If you have questions, you want to learn more, I am adding this information to the summary box manual that we have out there for calculating our quantities, that workflow. I'm going to be adding that to that manual. It'll be available probably within the next 3 or 4 weeks, because like I said, I'm still working on adding all of that information into it. Once I get it out there, it'll be available for you guys to go back in and see in a written format how to do this. One other thing that I just wanted to throw in here, there may be times when there are changes to pay items and it becomes, you're being told by a bulletin that I need this to use in this new pay item, and you don't have the D&C Manager because our MR isn't for another 3 weeks, okay? But you need that pay item now. You can go in, like I did with the drainage inlet, you can go in and modify an existing item, change the pay item number so that it calculates the correct pay item number. But when you do that, for instance, maybe it's an asphalt pay item, okay? That is an automated summary box, okay? That summary box is only going to calculate what you see here. So if they add a pay item, it's not a part of LDM. And I wanted to really fast show you guys if that is something that you do with your design within the D&C Manager. You need to go out to, and I'm going to go to Standard and explore the SS3 directory, okay, and open that up. And if that is what something that you've done, and then you need that summary box, you need to go to wherever out there on the server, or it might be a workstation on your C drive, but you need to go to SS3 or SS2 if you're working in SS2, it works there too. But you need to go to the apps, LDM, templates, roadway, XLSX, summary reports, okay? Apps, LDM, templates, roadway, XLSX, summary reports. And in here, for every automated summary box that we have an XLSX file, so we have the Excel, and we also have an XML file. There are 2 different types, okay? If I have a Guardrail pay item, because I don't have everything in Guardrail, but you want to automate it, okay? This Excel file, this is the one type of where it's getting the pay item of what it needs to extract from the Excel file. And the XML file is telling it to go to row 6, E, G, I, K. Okay, so when I have a merged cell, it's the first column and that row number, okay? So to automate it, go to the end, there's a bunch of them already here, copy the last 2, right click on design notes, insert and click paste, or insert copied cells, change this pay item, say I'm just putting a number in here just for an example, okay, and then save this file. All right, so now it will also look for that fictitious pay item number as well as all the rest of them, okay? And it only uses box 1, but you would want to go in and add that, do that same thing in box 2, just so that it's there for multiple boxes, okay? That's if I have these that total up at the bottom, okay? Those are found in the Excel file. If I have, and no, I don't want to save. Okay, if I have something like the summary of pavement where everything totals across into, I've got all the quantities and then it totals here, Okay, those type of pay item summary boxes are in the XML file. And when I open up this XML file, and I always do that, I want to double click and just open it. I'm going to open it with Notepad. And when I do that, you'll see in here I have a section for pay items. Okay, just go down the list, and if your pay item isn't there, then copy a line item and insert it in. Okay, and change the pay item. All right, and add that pay item number into this XML file. All right, note that this pavement ad hoc has to be in there, but the formatting's already here for you. All you need to do is just copy one that's similar, paste it in, and then you have that in the XML or in the XLS, so that the automation picks up that new pay item that you've added to the D&C Manager, exported it to QM, so that it will get your quantities that you've done into the summary box for you. No. All right. The only other thing that I wanted to really fast show you, you can create, and I'm just going to go use, even though it didn't really work for me like it was supposed to, just so that you can see. I'm going to go ahead and use one of these guardrail ones. You could do this with a cabinet, but I'm not familiar enough with all of the P items. But I have items sitting out here for guardrail already. Let me go ahead and let me just show you, say if I had, no, I want to use a pipe rail, something that has a lot of ad hocs on it. Basically what I can do is I can set up like I have with this pipe rail. Let me just draw this into, I need to be in here. Let me draw this into my file. And if I'm using the D&C Manager, I don't necessarily want to be using the civil features. But let me draw this guardrail in, okay? So now if I identify this item, oh, I don't want ID. I want to use this element attributes. If I identify this civil element, I can see that it is, I can see the attribute tag, and I can see that I have these pay items. So I have the guardrail pay item, and I also have the pipe rail pay item, okay? I can add in combinations of the unit and a string, and or the unit, the string, and a quantity. If I don't, like if it's a cell and I want, I know that I'm going to have, 20 feet for, a service drop, or those might even be each, or I have each pay items, or maybe I have a certain length of wire, or I don't know what it may be. There's a certain length of something that needs to go along with this particular cabinet box, okay? As you can tell, I am not a signals person. But the theory is there, and I can add all of the different pay items that I might need. In fact, I know a guy that works in District 2 that he has his own custom database, and everything that he could possibly put in with a cabinet, he puts all of those pay items in, okay? So when he calculates the item, so I'm going to go in here now and I'm going to calculate this. What is up with this thing today? Oh, I know what this one is. That's because I got all that other stuff in my collection. So now, and I've got to grab the guardrail. So now whenever I compute it, see I have two different results here, okay? So I've got this, I would have this list of pay items that it would calculate for me automatically just by finding one cell, okay? Then you go through and say, okay, well, in this particular case, I needed the guardrail, but I don't need pipe rail. But that happens to be the item that was used to draw it. Okay, maybe it's an oops, maybe whatever, if it is a cabinet situation, and in this particular one, I don't need this one pay item. all I have to do is toggle it off, okay? And then it doesn't export it, okay? So you go through, make sure all of the items that you need are toggled on, things that you don't need are toggled off, and then export that out to your MDB and you've got that quantity. All right, hopefully that made sense. All right, and I have run over this morning, but I really wanted you guys to understand and get the concept of this database can be modified. You can use it for more than just calculating quantities, but it also can be used to calculate, you know, other things other than our pay items that we need in our summary boxes. You can add pay items to your database so that you may have something that's project specific, and this particular pay item only gets used every now and then, okay? You can modify and make that customizable to you and your project, and it takes a little bit of setup time, but once you do have it set up, it will save you a lot of time in the end. Okay, I'm going to go to questions really quick. Let's see. All right. Well, since there are no questions and I have gone a few minutes over, I want to thank every one of you that has showed up today. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to attend our webinars, and I hope that you have a good day. I'm going to pop up. I will answer questions if you have any. I'm going to go ahead and just pop up my contact information. So if you or anyone that you know, if you're in the situation you need to modify your database in order to make it work for you, please let us know if you have a hard time getting that set up, and one of us, because there's several of us that should be able to help you, but definitely you can contact me or anyone in the support office and we can give you a hand getting all of that set up. All right, well, you guys have a very good day today and great rest of your week and weekend, and I will be talking to you again next week.